And welcome, true believers, on a Monday night in August as we careen towards the fall and pumpkin spice and horror movies. Welcome to
Pumpkin
Generation
spice in a
Movie.
horror movie.
Welcome to Generation Movie. My name is JW Colwell. I'm joined as always by my co-host, my cohort in film and avant-garde movies, Rich Drees. How are we doing tonight, Rich?
We've been better. In fact, I'm kind of pissed off right now.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I know you're ready to vibe.
I know I'm hot out of the box, but
You're hot out of the box. I mean,
like a quickly delivered
it could
pizza.
be it could be worse. It could be political, but it's not. It's something nerdy, and we're gonna get to it. Let me get this up first. We do want to do a few quick things. Um, we are super excited about Joe Ridgely on this network. He's one of our coolest and best assets as a network that we have. And when Joe, sometimes Joe gets mentioned in blurbs, and sometimes Joe gets mentioned, out of the side of somebody's mouth, and sometimes he gets full recognition for what he's doing. And I just wanted to comment on that tonight because Joe is on the blurb list for a book that's coming out, and this is a fascinating read from an amazing storyteller. A comedy of tragedies is a triumph of the heart and soul. Joe Ridgely, the Indie Escape Network. Um, this is interesting. It's a book that's written by Steve Uncle Creepy Barton. He's a legend in kind of like movie writing and just a person that was ahead of the curve on setting up fan sites. He's also worked recently on the Terrifier franchise, so he is still an avant-garde provocateur of film. And this book is coming out, and it's coming out December 10th. Joe has a blurb on the cover or on the back or wherever the blurb is. It's our very own Joe Ridgely. And of course, the book has got to be about all the things, it's an American memoir for the completely dysfunctional. All of the things you go through when you're in the movie business, all the things you go through when you're setting up film sites, all the things you're going through when you're a fan of horror movies, and then also you become a person that makes horror movies. Steve Barton has become that kind of ubermensch that jumps in and out of these things, and it's a big deal. And Joe getting a blurb is also a big deal. And if you do want to get the book, you can. Basically, it comes out on December 10th. The link for pre-orders is right there at the bottom of the screen. We're going to bring it up at the end of the show as well, in case not a lot of people are here. We're going to make sure more people get to see it later. But we're just proud that Joe is involved and that Joe is getting the respect from the Indie Escape Network that he so richly deserves. And we're super happy that Steve Barton has a book coming out. When you get the franchise name Uncle Creepy, it is sort of a major thing. He's written for a lot of websites. He's delved into producing horror films, like recently the Terrifier films, which are for horror fans are kind of lighting the world on fire. So we're super excited. We're happy that Joe is he's on a cover. It's impressive. So thank you for participating. If you want to pre-order the book, it's right there. And we're going to put it on later up. We're going to put it on later up in the show. Let's see what else. What else is going on? Oh, I gotta get the other thing up before I get yelled at. Yeah, I gotta get the other thing up before I get yelled at. So, of course, I can't find it. It's okay. It's fine. If you like our show and you want to subscribe, or if you want to watch, by all means, like, subscribe, and hang out at our YouTube channel. Lots of stuff there. If you don't like YouTube, you say, hey, I'm not a YouTube person. Great. You want to go to Facebook? Go to Facebook. Get it all out. Get whatever you want out of it. But you can find us there as well. That'll be running all the way through unless we're doing another promo for something else. And let's get to some comments, and then we will allow Rich to have his blood boil. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken McKernan.
Hey, Ken.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Joe Ridgely.
Joseph.
What's up, fellas? Hello, Jerry Kimura. Congrats, Joe
Hey,
Ridgely, Ken McKernan. Just a quote, but thank you. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't care. You're on the blurb and you're in front of the book. How can I yell after that? Okay, fair. I don't like getting yelled at, so that's that. I've been married 22 years. I do my best to not get yelled at. You know what I mean? I do my absolute best to make sure I'm not in trouble. We're going to get to the news. I also am super excited. We have a guest tonight for tonight's episode. I don't know how long he's hanging around. He's a busy guy. Well, we'll see. But I'm super excited. We have TJ Bowser from the Louder. Oh my God, I just fucked it up. That's okay. Now I'm going to get yelled at. It's fine. It is what it is. And
is it a show
it's
if
good.
you're not getting yelled at?
It's project. Is it a show if I don't fuck something up? We're going to have TJ Bowser from Project Louder Podcasting Network. I had it written down. It was there. I fucked it up anyway. It is what it is. I am who I am. Let's get to some news. Let's do box office and then we're going to simmer. We're going to try to simmer. Let's do box office because for the first time in a month's time, Deadpool and Wolverine is a number one. But it's not number one by much, but it's enough. Alien Romulus crashed the Deadpool and Wolverine party, and somewhere a Disney executive is just super excited about life because summer's been great for the Disney Corporation. Alien Romulus. We did the review on Friday. I think it's the best Alien film since Aliens. I know people like Prometheus. I know people like Alien Covenant. I think they're both good movies. I do not like Alien 3. We've discussed it. I think Alien Resurrection is okay. It's got some cool sequences, but nothing to write home about. But Alien Romulus, I think, resets the franchise, sets it up with a good young director. We didn't want to talk about any of the concerns and spoilers, but we can talk about some of them now. I think the one that is getting the most attention is the CGI of Ian Holm as Ash. He's actually playing a character called Rook in this. But, I read up on this controversy, Rich, and what I want to say to people is realize that his estate and his widow signed off on it. And realize that his wife, widow, and estate signed off on the fact because he was a little, before he died, he said he was really sad that nobody was reaching out to him to do cons or conventions and things, even though he was Bilbo. So when this opportunity came forward where they asked the estate and they asked her to do this, she said it was one of his favorite roles, and I think he would want that. And it was one of the roles that people always recognized him for. So after I read up on it, I think people who are bitching about it should shut the fuck up.
Well, everybody's acting like it's an entirely AI-generated performance. It's not. It started off as an animatronic. There was an actual actor who was close to sounding like Holm and reading the lines. And then they just kind of came in with some CG to touch up the animatronic footage to make it a little bit more lifelike and to tweak the voice to sound a little bit more like him. And, it's kind of skating the edge for me. And the only thing that's keeping me on the side of, not being too upset about this is the fact that, his family signed off and said, yeah, I think he would be perfectly fine with this.
That he would be thrilled, not just fine. He would be thrilled to be back.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key for me. Like if it's somebody making money off an estate or doing something else, I'm not thrilled with it.
Yeah.
But
and I've seen people complaining too. They're like, oh, well, why do we have to make it this character? Why can't it just be somebody new? And I'm like, well, the Ash model is a science officer model.
Right. And they've already established that the way they reuse
have science officer models in on their ships.
They reuse and they use the
different names, obviously.
Right, Bishop and also Ash have been used over and over again. So it's it's not out of context for the movie. I'm happy about the movie doing well. I think it's exciting. It's doing well. I'm happy about it. I can't lie. I'm not happy about it. Um, now, now, ladies and gentlemen, a quartet of anger from Rich Drees. Rich, what are you angry about, Rich? What news broke about an hour ago that has you a little bit up in arms?
That I literally finished posting right before signing in for this. Well,
I think it's a short-sighted mistake. I'm going to go on record as saying
Disney
I
made
think
a
it's short-sighted.
decision and have decided not to go forward with a second season of The Acolyte. This was the first live action or first any live action or animated storytelling being done in the High Republic era, which they had previously been developing in books and comics. It was setting up some very interesting things that kind of in fact, in my original review back in June, when I was able to see the first 4 episodes of the series before it dropped, I wrote that we can see where the show is starting to set the seeds that will ultimately lead to the Jedi's downfall in the prequel trilogy.
Yes,
it's their blindness, their arrogance, things like that.
the idea that they're monks
or
they're
generational
monks,
issues that
right? That they're unhappy.
build up to a critical point that we see.
Right. I think it's short-sighted. I also think, and I say this with all due respect to all the other Star Wars fans. I'm a Star Wars fan. You're a Star Wars fan. We have Star Wars fans that watch the show. I love Star Wars fans, but we have become a whiny bitch fandom. We've become the worst kind of fandom that doesn't want anything different from anything that's come before. And
I don't know. I have Star Wars fan friends. I have Star Wars friends who love the Acolyte, who want to explore the old Republic era, the High Republic era, in more things. I think it's a very small but very loud, whiny, bitchy,
very loud.
Fraction.
You're ruining my childhood. It's the same bunch of people that hated Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. It's the same bunch that bitches about everything.
We don't like any LGBTQ representation in our Star Wars, which is stupid and bigoted, frankly. Screw you. I don't go away.
We don't like strong women, although we love Princess Leia. It's weird.
They would hide these behind complaints about such and such a character showed up, but he wasn't even born for another 45 years. And then you go, well, where did you get that date of birth? And they go, oh, this random CD-ROM thing from 1999. Which you mean long before all of that old EU stuff was wiped away?
It's a weird fandom. I think the Acolyte being canceled is a miss because it rewards the loud Star Wars fans who will now take it as some sort of badge of honor that they did something, and it will further
it feels a little bit like after Last Jedi when they complained about, what do you mean, you don't have to be from a special bloodline to be able to use the Force, or how dare they have.
I'm sorry, the biggest thing from Last Jedi was, you ruined my Luke Skywalker.
Which
it's completely not true. My answer to that is always, who trained Luke Skywalker? Here, Rich, play this game with me. Who trained Luke Skywalker, Rich? Who's his Jedi master?
Ben Kenobi for about a day or two. Yoda for maybe a week.
Yoda. Okay. Let me ask you a question. As the Empire is taking control of the universe, what does Yoda do? Does Yoda come out of anywhere and fight and go after things? Or does he kind of hide in a hole and just go away for a very long time?
He hides in a hole.
Hides in a hole. Okay. That's the person that trains Luke. Okay. So if Luke were to become that person after a major failure, like, say, I don't know, losing his nephew to the dark side of the Force, and watching as his Jedi temple burned and all his students were murdered, would that maybe push somebody off the side and maybe say, I don't want to be a part of anything anymore?
True.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and from a practical point, blaming Rian Johnson when
J.J. Abrams left it so wide open.
He was inheriting the mystery box thing from J.J. Abrams. So it's like
it was impossible. It was impossible.
By the way, Luke's on this island. Figure it out. And so Johnson looked at things and took established stories and went, okay, yeah. And if we're going to go with the idea that Lucas says these stories have a rhyme to them, then that makes perfect sense.
Maybe Luke as a hermit is because his Jedi master was also a hermit. Just saying. Okay, but the Acolyte being canceled is sad.
One other thing that, just before we get off this, one other thing that kind of irritated me with the complaints about the Acolyte was, again, they were like, well, how are these Jedi involved with this story? And there's a Sith when the Jedi, 100 years from now said there haven't been a Sith in millennia. Well, A, the Sith are dumb in the Phantom Menace. They're arrogant and they don't know what the hell's going on when there's a Sith right under their nose. And B, this is like in the first couple of episodes, I'm like, can't you wait to find out how the season ends? Maybe that gets addressed. And of course it did. But they were in such a rush to complain about this show and try to hide it with like legitimate criticism when it wasn't a legitimate criticism. Because do you complain about a book when you're only on chapter 3? You're 45 pages into a 250-page book.
Is the book written by Rob Zombie? Sorry,
but
just a joke.
It was just a lot of stuff and nonsense, and I fear that kind of stuff got some people to maybe not give this a try. And
I had many Star Wars fans that I know that hadn't watched it at all.
They're missing out.
Barely recognizing. There were some really good Jedi lightsaber fights were fantastic. Episode 5 and episode 6 were great.
Is like freaking amazing.
Episode 5 is really good, and Manny Jacinto of The Good Place was really good.
I'm a huge Good Place fan, and that performance here was a revelation. I was like, what?
Is there anybody? Wait a second. Is there, when you say you're a Good Place fan, is there anybody that isn't the Good Place fan?
People.
Are there people that don't like the Good
Place?
Place?
To the bad place are not Good Place fans.
Fair. Ken says, sorry for bad news. It wasn't about actually about us. It was just about our nerd hearts dying a little bit inside.
I had a busy day, and I was like settling down to watch The Crow for the second time, and that just kind of like blew my phone up. I was like, son of a.
When you're married, you're always in trouble. Just saying. That's very true, Jerry. It didn't look as bad as Leia did in Rogue One. No, didn't. Like David. Okay. Like David. Like many robots that are all the same because the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is lazy. They make the same robots for every purpose. Anyway. It's been a pretty good day though. I mean,
it's like Honda kicking out 10,000 Accords.
We don't do politics on the show, but I'm going to tell you right now, there was a little bit of AI trickery today that I think the world is going to come crashing down on. We're not going to talk about it. I just think I'm going to give you a heads up. I think this was a mistake of epic proportions in the AI that came out from a certain political candidate. Good luck with that, and enjoy 80 million people really being annoyed with you, and also guaranteeing you're not going to get her endorsed. Anyway. But anyway, on to happier news, happier in the sense of a great movie with amazing talent. Tonight's movie is The Crow, right?
Yes.
And we've had Natasha Bagitsky on. We've had, Joe Ridgely on every once in a while when he, again, when he's like, you need to fix things or he wants to yell at me or whatever. And then I'm making shit up now. Joe yelling at me doesn't actually happen. But I am super excited because we are working in conjunction with Project Louder. They are a nonprofit podcasting organization. I just met TJ a couple weeks ago. I'm super thrilled. He's going to join us tonight. The Crow is one of his favorite movies. In fact, Rich and I were treated to a Crow musical number before the show with the Eric Draven action figure that he has. So, without further ado, I bring to you TJ Bowser. Welcome, TJ.
Hello, everybody! Fire it up! Fire it up! Fire
No. I do not support this. I know you want to do the fire it up thing. I know you're for it. I'm just saying I'm not pro Fun Boy or any of these people. I think tell us before we get, let's let everybody get to know everybody. Project TJ Bowser and Project Louder. Tell us a little bit about the network. Tell a little bit about you. You got a lot of cool stuff in your room back there. I'm moderately jealous of some of it.
Okay,
tell us a little bit about yourself.
So the easiest way to talk about Project Louder would be to start from the beginning, which would be a little bit all the way back, let's say six years ago. I actually started a Star Wars podcast called Do Back Discussion, and it was right around the time, right before Episode 8 came out. So it was all that hype and everything leading up to Episode 8. So I did that for a while, and then after Episode 8 came out, the fandom took a nosedive, as you guys mentioned earlier, with that hard split that kind of took place after The Force Awakens. I kind of was like, I'm going to get out of Star Wars and branch off and do other things. So I started venturing into horror movies, and that led into so many different avenues. So I was like, since we're doing horror movies, we already had an established foothold in Star Wars fandom. Let's see if we can bring other content creators on. So that kind of blossomed off into a podcast network. We started at like 4 or 5 podcasts, and we're now over 20. Our podcasting website, projectlouder.net, is absolutely filled to the brim with podcasts that we either finished, because we do limited series of stuff. Like we have a show that's completely about Mortal Kombat, and it's about every game that's ever been released and TV show and everything like that. And they talk about that. And that's the whole purpose of the show. And then whenever they are finished reviewing all those,
you're pro Goro, right? You are pro Goro.
I like Goro, yeah.
I like Goro a lot.
Anytime he shows up, even if it looks bad, it's fucking cool. It's Goro.
He's a man. Yeah, he's cool. He's got big arms.
Absolutely. But we try to have a buffet of a podcast network. So it kind of caters to anybody who can go to the website and be like, okay, I can enjoy this. So that's what we kind of trying to aim to do. Recently, we kind of condensed shows to kind of focus on more of our mainstays. Rants from the Black Lodge, which is hosted by Brandon A. Lane, which is one of the shows that have been with us for a plethora of years, probably about half a decade right now. Very
cool.
Over.
You're using plethora correctly in a sentence. I appreciate
it. I try. But
so do I.
But I've done a lot of other different things. I did my own comic book called Paranoia. That's available on Amazon. I did a documentary with Jason Goes to Hell director Adam Marcus called Hearts of Darkness. That's coming out at some point later this year. I did a project for Vestron Video that I can't talk about right now, but I will talk about later this year. So Anna just started a new project this week.
It's secret.
Yes, a very secret project. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm going to be announcing a new project very soon involving pizza. So that will be very fun. But yeah, what I'm really excited to talk about is The Crow. I'm excited about the new movie that comes out, I believe, Friday. Am I right?
It does open Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is timed appropriately.
Can I ask you a question? Like, as
yes.
a Crow fan, because you have the poster in the back, you have the thing. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel that this movie weighs on all the other movies in the franchise? Do you feel it? And do you also feel that the immediate reaction to all the things that happened with the Crow reboot, like the trailer reaction, the second trailer reaction, where everybody's like freaking out going, that's not my Eric Draven, or just freaking out in general? What do you think that is attributable to?
I think it was a knee-jerk reaction. I have a very different opinion on things. So my first introduction to The Crow was the movie, like most people, I'm sure. Then I went back and I read all the comics. I have every single comic that they've ever done. There's one of my first original prints there.
Nice.
But then I also have every single Crow series possible, and I love them. I actually like the comics better than the movies, and there's some real stinkers in this franchise. I mean, once you get past 2, it's just fucking god awful. I like the TV show though; it's pretty cool.
Blame Canada on that one. Blame
think
Canada.
People saw the new one, and they're like, it's not exactly like Alex Proyas' one. It's not Brandon Lee, and it never will be. And I don't know why people have a problem with them remaking this, but not fucking Halloween or the Texas Chainsaw for the 80th fucking time. And it was just a knee-jerk reaction because people are just expecting more of the same or wanting more of the same when they're never going to get more of the same. It's 2024. It's not 1994 anymore.
Okay. Well, I'm not the biggest horror guy here. JW is more of a horror guy than me. Now, when it comes to remakes, I was interested in Rob Zombie's Halloween, and from a storytelling standpoint, I liked the beginning half of that movie more when he's exploring Michael Myers a little bit. I know some people don't like that. He demystified it, but I kind of like how it made it more grounded. And then once it became Rob Zombie recreates his favorite moments from the original Halloween, I kind of got a little bored with it. Now, for The Crow, I'm all for somebody redoing The Crow. Maybe bring in what's the character's name? Skull Cowboy.
Yes.
That would be fun. As somebody who read the original book when it came out in 1991 or whatever it was, I'm a little leery about the actual.
It looks a lot like the Crow Memento Mori comic, with the Italy type thing going on in the background and the shorter hair look for the Crow. I feel like it's visually it looks like that comic book, but they're using the Eric Draven name to be like, hey, here's something that you guys recognize. But
I'll admit, my concern is I regularly attend advanced critic screenings in Philadelphia, and we have not had one scheduled for The Crow. No critic screening.
That's usually a bad sign.
Yeah, it's not a great sign.
It's not a great sign.
There was much of a press thing for it in LA or anything like that. So I'm kind of holding my breath about this. We'll see, Thursday afternoon if I wind up going to see it or not. I got a couple other things on my schedule as well, but I'm hoping it's good. I always go into a movie hoping it's good because I don't want to waste my time and money.
I want movies to succeed. I think that's one of the things that make Rich and I why we get along so well is we desperately want things to succeed. We're like, please, God, just find a way to make this work. And I was excited until I saw some of the pictures of Skarsgård. He was a little bit off for me. I mean,
you guys watched the clips?
Just take a look at the picture. Anyway, I when I saw this picture of Bill Skarsgård, I mean, oh wait, that's Rich. That's Rich. I'm sorry.
That's Halloween from the late 90s, somewhere in there.
You look good, man. You look really good, actually. This is actually the picture that everybody kind of like. This was the first picture that came out.
JW, I think they've posted 3 clips total of the movie that are maybe that range.
Yeah,
a minute and a half to 2 minutes. What do you think of those?
I think for fans of the comic book, I think there's stuff to like there.
Mm-hmm.
I am of the mindset with this reboot and with this movie, and after rewatching this movie in the last 24 hours, there's a love affair between the Crow fans and this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you have is, you're right. I think it's a little bit of what you were saying, like the idea that they want 94, but it's 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that there's a melancholy that's tied to this movie that, whether we want to think about it or not, it's subconsciously, this movie is a testament to Brandon Lee. This movie is a testament to his career, what he could have been, untapped, unlimited potential, right? And so when you say you're going to remake this movie, or you make a sequel to it, a shoddy sequel, 2 or 3 shoddy sequels, and a decent TV show, like when it doesn't live up to it, because part of it is he gave his life for this performance. He wasn't supposed to be in the movie. You know what I mean? Like he fought really hard to get it, and then a stupid accident on set ends what could have been one of the greatest action star film in film history. Right? He was on the road. He had made 2 or 3 movies that were boom, 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 right in the line, perfectly getting him in line with the audience. He makes this. This is his breakout movie, and then all of a sudden we don't have it anymore. You know what I mean? And it's something where we it's just it's a connection to this movie that people like. The movie is directed at us, correct? Right? And most of the people I've talked to, they're so off put by the idea of even thinking about remaking it. You're right. Everybody can remake Halloween 150 times. But if you remake a movie that has this much melancholy tied to it, there is a certain thing to push away. Like, it won't be micro. It's not micro. Like, that's what we're going to hear on Friday, I'm afraid.
I wish people got this upset every time they did a Twilight Zone something then.
Well, that's the thing. It's what I would say is, what I think, TJ, is that it's an internal connection to everybody. With like horror movie fans and movie fans in general remember the horrible story about what happened to Brandon Lee, right? It became a dominant story about this movie, and then the movie itself kind of like came out, and it ended up being great, and so it became this. You know what I mean? Like, it became this amazing kind of like a testament and a memorial to untapped potential. And part of the problem I think people are going to have with this new reboot is whether it looks good or not, right? I mean, the action sequences look fine. We've come a long way with regards to CGI and effects, so everything should be on par, considering, right? If they're taking it seriously. But I just
that we just got done complaining about Romulus there, like, so like, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
but
that's another
different.
thing too.
But in Romulus' perspective, I'll give you an example. Romulus cost under any other Alien movie in the last 20 years, and looked like $100 million. You know what I mean? So I understand that. Let's talk. Let's see.
Well, and also to the point about some of the criticism fired at Romulus, where people were like, "Oh, it's just a bunch of member berries for other stuff from the Alien franchise." I'm like, "Well, guys,
it's gonna fit in there.
Member berries or the actual like elements of the franchise?"
Yeah.
Like, xenomorphs are going to show up in an Alien movie. That's not a member berry thing.
Yeah.
It's like
you gotta have face huggers in a fucking Alien movie.
Do you go to Star Wars and go, "Oh, Jesus Christ, lightsabers again?"
Yeah. Another Wookiee. Damn it. Like,
well, Wookiee with lightsabers is a totally different thing. That was amazing. But let's get into production. Let's do what we do, our deep dive. TJ, you're freely invited to stay and join us as we ply our trade with the crow tonight. So we start with production. I think one of the things that happened. Ooh, there you go. Perfect. Start with production. I think there's a lot of fighting backstage in this movie. You can find any one of a number of 100 fights about the screenplay, about who's going to direct, producers getting fired, producers being brought on, Edward Pressman being one of them, and just, Paramount deciding not to, actually distribute it, even though Paramount produced most of it. Miramax, picking up the pieces after the Brandon Lee death. But curses. But the thing that dominates when you're reading up on this movie is the main thing. Brandon Lee died on filming a scene where he shouldn't have died because they were really, really bad with the safety protocols on the behind the scenes of this movie, and the idea that the night they were doing this gun scene with him and it's the sequence where he gets shot coming into the apartment from 12 feet away. When you read up on it, it was a really bad sequence of events. They did a test firing with the gun. They also put bullets in the gun to make it look like it was loaded, right? Even though it's a quick cut, you don't even see it. And then things got jammed in the chamber, so when they fired the blanks, it was enough of a charge to release the chamber, and he got hit in the stomach and died. And then you read up that the prop master's assistant was the one that was overlooking things and didn't follow any of the protocols. And the gun master, who was supposed to be on set, wasn't the night that they did this particular scene. And it becomes this horror story that, oddly enough, and I'm going to talk about it in Legacy, oddly enough, has been repeated a couple of times recently. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, especially with a tragedy like this, it dominates everything. The film is dedicated to Brandon and Eliza, right? It becomes bigger than the movie itself, and also all the other fighting that I usually talk about in my production segment, Rich. None of the fighting is fun because everything that happened on this fateful day and on March 31st, 1993, it is a stain on all kinds of the set precautions that we should be taking regularly.
And I will say this, outside of this instance, the only other two things I can think of are, of course, the recent tragedy on the western set of Rust involving.
Do you know it's the first time? Do you know it's the first time that Eliza has talked about the Brandon Lee thing since she talked about what happened on the Rust set?
No,
she had not talked about it since everything that happened, right? Since when it came out, she stopped talking. She didn't. But when the Rust set thing happened, she brought it up and she basically said, we are still in a world where we're using real weaponry on screen or on sets that is dangerous to actors and creative people. And, the Rust set stuff is, I was going to talk about it in Legacy. We can talk about it now. But she had become a big proponent of safe gun set accords that have have just never taken place. And so it's
to be honest, outside of those two incidents, the only other one that I can even remember was John Wesley Hexum back in like the early 80s. The guy from Voyagers, he was on to his next show, and he was playing around with a gun that had a loaded blank in it, and there was like some wadding in the chamber. And he goes, I wonder if this has got one for me. Boom. And he killed himself accidentally.
Yeah, and he put it up to his temple.
Someone died during the Crow TV show as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Well,
okay,
so
I believe it was an explosion, and like shrapnel came off the explosion and like killed him.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, there have been other types of deaths, but I'm specifically speaking to
gun-related ones,
firearm-related deaths, and the fact that we can only come up with maybe 3
that we know.
I'm willing to say there's probably 1 or 2 others that I don't know of or have forgotten, but over all this time, I think speaks relatively well of the
most prop
processes that are in place on sets. I've talked to friends who are stunt people. I've talked to a friend of mine who just actually was the armorer on Terrifier 3, and about some, about gun safety and stuff like that, because we were thinking about doing something like that in one of our shorts, but we're not. We just went,
we're good. We're good.
But so I don't have a whole lot of experience with guns. We were never like a hunting family or anything like that. I have a healthy respect. So, I wanted to have those conversations because I understand that these things are deadly. But Brandon Lee's widow does make a very good point that, in this day and age, we should just have, a metal gun with a working trigger and maybe a little bit of a barrel going in, but something solid in there so nothing can ever go out. And then we can just CG in some, muscle flash and stuff. We don't need actual working weapons anymore. It's easy and inexpensive enough to do.
Right. It's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary thing. But okay.
Yeah.
Really quick development again.
And any life for something as honestly kind of down on the scale as making a movie versus, doctors or, soldiers, protecting borders or what have you. It's kind of senseless. So even though we've only had a small handful of gun-related deaths on movie sets over the years, it's still something that
that's a major thing. I will say again, the other thing, there were lots of fights on this movie. A lot over credit, a lot where people tried to get credit when they couldn't get credit. Jeff Most, who is a producer, tried to get a writing credit, but if you don't know, the Writers Guild does not allow that to happen, right? They're a big proponent of not doing that. Alex Proyas came in late in the game, right? He was basically hired by Paramount to direct it. And then, I think one of the other interesting side notes, the two actors that were, in consideration for Eric Draven were Christian Slater and River Phoenix, who also ended up dying tragically as well. So it's like this weird, thing. But Brandon Lee came out of nowhere. And basically, the producers and director and writer O'Barr didn't think he was right, James O'Barr. And then he came in and just delivered a knockout audition. And the thing is, when you watch it, Rich, you can see it. Can see him, like, the emotional scenes are so good and his articulation is so amazing. Like, he does little things as an actor that you just go, that's really cool. Like the way he does things. And in this, I hadn't watched it in forever. And when I was watching it today, I was just amazed.
Even the way he stands and like kind of like
the way there's a gracefulness to it. When he sits, like the 3 or 4 times he sits, either there's a fluid motion to him. Once he gets the the wobble out from the grave, right? But it's everything about the performance. It is in death. It is one of the greatest star-making performances you'll ever see. Like,
sadly, yeah,
it's sad, real sad.
Yeah.
Real sad. I rewatched Rapid Fire and Showdown in Little Tokyo. It's all there. Everything's there. He's small movie with that's like a cult flick, and then kind of a cheesy action 90s action movie that's actually better than it should be. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I don't think it's great, but anything with Powers Booth is a little bit good. And then it starts off with a couple extra stars just because it has Powers Booth. And then this, and you rewatch this, and it's the melancholy just sweeps over you. And as you're watching it, like, you're sad for the characters, you're sad for the thing, and then as a fan, you're sad for yourself.
Yeah, I'll admit, I hadn't watched it. I mean, I had it on Blu-ray, and I probably bought the Blu-ray within like the first year that I had a Blu-ray player. So that was like 2000 and
something. Don't date yourself. Don't date yourself. We're trying to create a podcast in here.
It's been, I know, it's been over 10 years since I've watched the movie, judging by the dust on the top of the
dust.
Cake. But as you know, over the past several years, I've lost a couple of friends, and there were parts of me watching this movie that found myself thinking about what happened to Brandon Lee and what a tragedy it was that he died young. Then my brain started to drift a little bit to my friends who are no longer with me.
You lost, yes,
and that's kind of really very effective in evoking all of that. I mean, I know that I still have trouble watching the last bit of Return of the King, And about 2 years ago, when I went to watch Babylon 5, that last episode, if you're a Babylon 5 fan, you know what I'm talking about. It's very emotional, and it's about death and going on and leaving people behind. And that wrecked me. In fact, talking somebody on Twitter this year was live tweeting they were doing a first run watch through Babylon 5, one episode a day. And when they got to that last episode, just listening to their reactions was like, oh, here we go again.
Babylon 5, the inferior Deep Space Nine.
So I give this movie a lot of credit for not just being kind of a cheap exploitation revenge film, which it could have been. It really carries some emotional heft to it, and which is what I really like, and which is amazing.
And what I would say to you is, I think that's
coming in at the last minute. He didn't have a whole lot of time to kind of put his personal stamp on the script.
He embodied tragedy so well.
Mm-hmm. But boy, oh boy, does that movie look like an Alex Proyas movie?
It really does. It really does. Like, and that's like production design. That's the other thing. Two things that we need to talk about that we can move on.
So good.
The soundtrack, but with Graham Revell, a very kind of melancholy. It's great. It's a great soundtrack with great bands. Stone Temple Pilots, and like stuff from the '90s. If you were listening, banger after banger on the soundtrack, and it's a really great. Special effects are 90s ish, but it looks lots of model work. Yeah, it looks great. It looks absolutely great. It looks like a hellscape, and
this has the same production designer that did Watchmen.
Yeah, it's a really well done production design, and I think that the music and everything that goes into it, they really, even the cat, like when you look at those other Crow movies, right? When you look at the other Crow movies, when you look at the different things about it, right? One of the things that stands out, like, look at this cast that they got, right? The cast that they assembled Ernie Hudson, Michael Wincott, Bai Ling, David Patrick Kelly, right? Tony Todd and John Polito are all above normal, casting in small roles all over the movie. And Michael Berryman was also going to be part of it as your Skull Cowboy.
If you watch the deleted scenes, he's in the montage or the work print.
Yeah, and so he would have been fantastic. Also, a funny thing, we're going to talk about it in Legacy. I'll save a little thing I dug up that might come in handy in Legacy for me. Go ahead.
I listened to, I watched this movie twice today. I watched it once through just to refresh, and then I was like, I still had some time. I was eating dinner. I threw the director's commentary on from Alex Proyas, and there is so much more model work in this than I realized. Like portions of the car chase are done in model. The helicopter was entirely a model. They couldn't afford a real helicopter, which kind of surprised me. It was. And also, you could tell, part of this is like just him doing a dry run for things he's going to do in Dark City. I really like the fact
it's so true.
I mean, I didn't put this together until he actually said it, but they shot this at the Carlico Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina. That place is still there. It's now owned. It just got bought like within the last year. By another place called Cinespace, and the back lot of like streets that they had, that looked all super grungy and terrible and crappy. The next production that rolled in after they were done shooting on the outdoor set was the Coen Brothers Hudsucker Proxy, which is very you've seen it, right, TJ?
Yeah.
Beautiful 1950s crisp. lovely
Not
romanticized
the movie you
New
think
York.
would use that set at all.
Not the same street. You would not believe these were the same streets. And Alex Proyas said, "Yeah, we were still shooting, indoors on a set indoors. And then like after the Coen brothers showed up, I kind of walked out one day and took a look. I was like, he couldn't even believe that it was the same place. So, and Sucker is one of my favorite
super
films.
interesting.
So that just really made me like chuckle. I was like, oh my God, I never even realized that. That's great.
Let's
magic of
talk
movies.
about box office and how it hit. It I am gonna say it came out in May 11th. I'm sorry, May 10th, 1994. May 13th. Actually, I'm sorry, I screwed that up. Budget on the movie was 23 million. It had a worldwide box office take of $94 million, which in the 90s is a pretty big fucking deal. Opened number one in the United States at 1,573 theaters to $11.7 million. Although at the time, this was the beginning of Miramax fudging numbers to become number one at the box office. So you had some industry sources believing that Miramax had overstated the weekend gross by upwards of $1 to $2 million.
Gee, Harvey Weinstein would
grossed,
not be truthful.
lying about something.
No.
It grossed 50.6 in the United States and Canada, 43 million internationally, and again for a worldwide total of about 93.7 million on the budget of 23 million. And when you look at the numbers, Rich, one of the things that's super interesting, it lasted about 4.5 weeks. So it opened early May, lasted till about June. The inflated adjusted domestic box office for inflation would be $133 million. So you'd put it at about 7th or 8th at the box office this year, which is pretty amazing. And the other thing that's super cool, again, box office wise, it's 2.2 times the production budget, which is when you get into these movies as things kind of happen. You and I have seen, sometimes movies 15, 20 times the production budget. But as movies get through the 90s, 2000s, become more expensive to make, the production budget versus worldwide box office goes down dramatically. And this is one of the cases where it's not super high. It had a max run of about 2,119 theaters, which in 94 is a lot of screens. Because, 94, we were just the beginnings of the multiplex craze that was going to sweep through the industry. And it's an interesting kind of like, I didn't remember it grossing. Like, first off, when I was in the 90s, I wasn't really thinking about worldwide box office. I could care less. But 50 million is a lot of money for a movie in the 90s. That's not a major release. You know what I mean? Critical response then and now. Rich, there's some interesting thoughts. First off, we use TJ on the show. We use Rotten Tomatoes as an aggregate, not necessarily saying it's great. We don't judge it, but it's a nice little aggregate. It's at 86% with 71 reviews, I should say. The audience score is at 90%. So, like I said, I think the major problem that's going to come for this weekend for the Crow reboot is that not only and that's with over 250,000 reviews, 250,000 ratings, have it at 90%. The real problem for the Crow reboot isn't Alien Romulus or Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine, or It Ends With Us. The real problem for the Crow reboot is this Crow. That's the problem. Because it's really funky that it's so beloved. Do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those touchstone movies. Like you remember when you heard that he died and stuff like that. But the movie being at about 86% is kind of intriguing. Rolling Stone really liked it.
Yeah, there's that irony, I think, that kind of drove some people to see the movie. Of the movie is about a guy who dies tragically and comes back from the dead. And in a way,
Yes.
you know,
It's
Brandon
ironic.
Lee,
It's the ultimate
tragically,
ironic.
but this movie brings him back to life for us.
And it
And
brings him
there's
back to life
a more
for us
fascination to see the
forever.
movie that, yeah,
Forever. It brings him back to life for us forever. And that's, you know, TJ asked me what I think of the clips. I think the clips are fine, but I think getting over the shadow of this movie, especially after rewatching it today, I was like, this is really good. Like it's not perfect, but it's, you know, but I think where the Crow is going to have a problem, the reboot is going to also have a problem, is the sheer volume of character actors that are in the original. Like it's loaded, you know what I mean? And it becomes this incredible, like, everybody's there. The fucking Candyman's in it. It's just ridiculous. You know, it becomes ridiculous. We like Roger Ebert around here because Rich and I kind of fancy ourselves as modern day Siskel and Ebert. You know, I'm the chunky one. He's, you know, super thin and cool. He basically, Ebert liked it. Thought it was one of the most visually, aesthetically pleasing films he had ever seen. Right.
And of course, Ebert would go on to do the that critics commentary on Dark City as well.
Yes.
So
yeah, I think he really liked Proyas's visual style.
what Proyas was doing.
Yeah. He also says it's basically it's Brandon Lee's best film. But he also went on to say in a rather controversial comment that not only is it Brandon Lee's best film, it's better than any of his dad's movies also. Which, whoa, yeah, that whoa, shots fired unironically.
That's a tough call.
That's a tough thing for.
Especially, I think we're coming up on the anniversary of Enter the Dragon this week.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one that's problematic. But so I mean, the people who don't like the movie tend to focus on the fact that it's, you know, it's all sizzle, no steak. You know, but another things that the critics all talk about is that how it's world building, right? That it's a world building movie, very similar to Blade Runner, very similar to Batman, that basically, you know, the sets in the world building is better than some of those movies. Because you know, one critic, Todd McCarthy, had the great, from Variety, had the wonderful, it's set in a generic inner city so hellish it makes Gotham City look like the Emerald City. which is true, right? Production designer Alex McDowell. Also, you know, Darius Wolski is the cinematographer, so it has, you know, it has other praise. You know, Roger Ebert called it the best version of a comic book universe he had ever seen at the time. We're 3 years in. This is movie 5 years in on Batman, Tim Burton's Batman. And McCarthy also chimed in and said one of the most effective live actioners ever derived from a comic strip. Also, the soundtrack gets many things in the reviews. Negative reviews all tied to the thing that it basically said, oh, effects are okay, cinematography is okay, setting's okay, script is superficial and badly written, one-dimensional characters. But I was thinking about that today. I disagree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, no.
I disagree wholeheartedly from everything that happens in this movie. Like, Brandon Lee is fantastic. Rochelle Davis, who plays Sarah, is fantastic. Ernie Hudson is great in this movie, right?
Even the cat.
even Gabriel the cat is wonderful. Also, Michael Wincott as the crazy, kind of like over the top crime boss villain with the creepy sister / we're gonna fuck somebody dead characterization, like, ripping out eyes and throwing them at people and shit, is they're great. Bai Ling is terrifying in this movie. I didn't
Mm.
like. I was watching her the entire time she's on screen, like until she gets her eyes pecked out by the crows. The crow, I was like, she's the most dangerous one in the entire fucking movie. Not the, light it up, light it up. They're not dangerous. She's dangerous. Michael Wincott is dangerous. Um, I think the script is exactly what it needs. I think that what they fixed when they had to work around his death also works. I love the subplot of like I enjoyed the superficial character thing bothers me, and I was thinking about that today as I was reading some of the stuff I was reading, because I think they do a really good job of like Eric really cares about Sarah. Like he's really worried about her. Like when he goes and he catches her mother and he like squeezes the drugs out of her arms, and and is like, and looks at her and says, "Your daughter needs you." You know what I mean? Like,
or the embrace in the apartment.
Yes, it's all. He's really good.
Which
really
I dare say was probably. I think they don't say it directly on the commentary track, but that whole apartment scene was shot after
he passed.
After so that would be the like life cast mask over the actor.
No, it wasn't a life cast. It was
it's all silhouette over the back shoulder.
Yeah, and it was a CGI. All they did was they put like a
oh no, I was talking about what he just had on, because if you look at the the removed footage or whatever montage that they have on the Blu-ray here, there's some really bad scenes where you can see that person doing the action sequences, and they have Brandon's life cast mask over top, and it looks terrifying.
Can I blow your minds now as we get ready to go to Legacy? I think this is one of the better 90s movies. I think there's a reason there's a cultural touchstone with it.
Yeah.
Let me give you a fun Legacy thing. So you're talking about that guy in that terrible life mask and whatnot. If I told you that that guy was Chad Stahelski, would that be shocking?
Really?
Chad, the director of the John Wick movies, was his stunt double.
Nice.
And him,
I did not know that.
And Brandon Lee actually gets credit in the film for doing the stunt work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fully credited thing with him and Jeff Amata, and Chad Stahelski was his stunt double that became the person on set to take over for him when he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me that's not a legacy thing.
I do want to give some credit to Rochelle Davis, who played Sarah. I think she did a really great job. It's her first movie. She wasn't in another movie for like 15 years. I don't know if it was a case that she went back to school and decided to become an actress as an adult then. But I was watching her work, and she had that toughness that, I'm basically raising myself kind of a thing. But she still was allowing herself the vulnerability to, a year after, like, the two people who were probably surrogate parents to her, much more so than her actual mom was. She was still allowed herself to open up to Ernie Hudson's cop character and and have kind of a relationship with him where he knew if he tried to put her into foster care, she would just run away again. So he was trying to look out for her as best he can, and she was allowing him to do that.
It's a great kid performance.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get him often, and I think one of the reasons that she does the voiceover is because she is. I think they noticed her on set and just went, "She's good. She's doing really well. If we make her the voiceover, it kind of gives us an added ammunition on why her character would be the one that reacts, that goes to that, goes behind the, goes to the house, goes to the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great performance.
Thinking about this just now, having to have to film that after the accident, and I'm sure, she was like 12, I think. She was born in 1980. So yeah, she would have been 12 when they were shooting this, or 13. And then having to continue on work, especially that specific scene.
Maybe
A,
that's why
it's
she didn't
really
do
good
anything.
work. And B, I can see why she didn't want to do any more acting for another decade and a half.
It's a really good kid performance.
I bet you she didn't feel safe on sets. Like, if this is your first big movie and then something like that happens,
well, and
like,
also,
why would you?
I think you know, one of the things that comes across in the movie. Well, first off, again, I cannot not stress enough if you haven't watched it in a while, how good Brandon Lee comes across. Like everything that you think, where you know, because we have that happen, Rich, where somebody goes, you know, where you and I have seen movies where it's like, if that person hadn't died, like sky was the limit. Heath Ledger, or you know what I mean, like people who've died tragically, who we look at and we go, if they hadn't died, where would the orbit, like what would the orbit be for them? I legit think he would have been a megastar. Like I think he would have been in, you know, a lot of.
Do you think he'd be like what Robert Downey Jr. is now, where he kind of had like this early resurgence? And now is like a megastar.
No, I think he would have. I think he would have been a megastar. Like if this, because here's the thing: what comes across is he seems likable. He's nice. He articulates well, so I think directors would have loved him. Do you know what I mean? Like everything that you need for a superstar.
We're already talking about doing something else, and again, commentary track. So I'm pulling a lot from that tonight. And Proyas said, you know, hey, he wanted to direct stuff, and we were talking about, you know, projects he wanted to.
Well, he was right. He was already doing that, right? He was already directing the stunt choreography, right? He was already doing the stunt choreography. So he was like, I think in our lifetimes we've had 3 actors that I was thinking about it today as I was watching the movie, and I was, you know, we got robbed, right? Legit robbed when we lost River Phoenix, when we lost Heath Ledger, and when we lost Brandon Lee. Those are the 3 where you look at them and you go, if, you know, like we always have what ifs with Marvel, right? I just think he would have been something really special. And I think it would have been something where we could have all, you know, he might have stolen roles from people. Might have, like, you know, I'll give you an example of a movie I was thinking about today that I think.
Okay, where would Brandon Lee, if he was alive today,
The Matrix,
fit into the Marvel universe?
The Matrix. Think about if Brandon Lee was alive.
Instead of Keanu Reeves?
Instead of Keanu Reeves.
Would he be John Wick?
I don't think he'd be John. Well, maybe. But that's what I mean.
Right?
After watching it today, the potential is unlimited. For me, I was thinking about it. It's unlimited. Where would he be in the Marvel? That's an easy answer, TJ. He would obviously be Shang-Chi. And
I think at this point he
would have been a little old.
He probably would have been in the. Was it Danny Yun who played the bad guy in the movie?
Yes, he could have been the bad guy.
Bucky.
I just think like watching it today and reflecting, I forgot how good he was in the movie, and I forgot how much I was hurt by the loss. And I think as I process it today, I'm like, oh, this is not good juju for the Crow reboot on Thursday. It's just not. I could feel it in my bones. Like if I'm feeling it. And I think you look at
told.
Yeah, well, it's just
one other actor I kind of want to highlight here. Another favorite character actor of mine, John Polito.
Yeah,
John Polito's fantastic.
He's fantastic.
He's
he was like on a streak from like 90 to 94 or so. Miller's Crossing, Barton Fink, The Rocketeer, Hudsucker Proxy, and then The Crow. And then he had a couple of off years before he came back with us too.
And greasy guy, it's great.
The sleazy businessman in any '90s movie. Get me John Polito.
I miss that we don't get to see him in movies anymore. I really do.
I do because he was great.
That's the guy.
He's the guy. It's like he busted up my shop. Yeah, he looked like a clown and stuff. Okay, legacy and franchise viability. So I was gonna go with that we're having a reboot this week, but I think what I'm gonna go with because of the nugget I uncovered. Can you imagine that the person that you were stunt doubling for was Brandon Lee, and then all like at some point in the 2010s, you get to direct an action movie and you do all the stunt choreography yourself? The Chad Stahelski thing blew my mind today because I was like, think about like think about how careful they are on that set. You don't ever hear about any injuries on those sets, even though everything's
Yeah.
going at like high speeds. You think about like that legacy of like he was around when somebody passed away on the set of something that he ended up having to do the different things for. It's a really interesting kind of like it's like fortuitous, right? And then he gets to direct, and I think it's an interesting legacy. What about you, Rich? What do you think one of the legacy things are from the Crow? I'm worried about the franchise viability because I've talked
Yeah, we're not
myself
touching
into
that. I
I've talked
want
myself
to
into it,
focus.
crushing just the
I
crushing
want to kind of focus
expectations.
on something a little negative,
Go ahead.
because sometimes movies have unintended consequences. And in the mid 90s and through the late 90s, we had kind of like this bit of explosion of goth culture. And in and of itself, it's fine. But some people, unfortunately, took it and took the wrong messages out of it. And then ultimately you wind up with like those dickheads in Columbine, the trench coat mafia, thinking that that look of dressing in black was all cool. And I mean, these kids obviously needed some deep psychological help that their parents were not getting them, and their parents should have had those guns locked up.
90
But
that is a good that's viable.
unfortunately, you can trace some of this back to kids watching The Crow and not having the media
I blame the
literacy.
hitcher.
I blame the hitcher.
I blame parents who don't, kind of talk to
Rutger
their
Hauer.
kids about how these things are made and say this is fantasy, and the fact that these kids don't have like a really strong media literacy to really understand what they're watching.
Well, in the
Um,
90s, yeah, the 90s were
very
definitely a
grateful that my
time of
parents, we grew up at a time when there was like the making of Star Wars specials and stuff like that on TV, and my parents let me go, to the library, and I dug into a lot of books on how films were made and the making of films and the history of Hollywood and stuff like that. So I always had a very strong sense of going, oh, that's an effect. That's cool. I like how this is shot, but obviously I know this is fake bullshit. And
you realize
unfortunately, I think there are some kids out there who didn't have that kind of training. And
well, that's true. I mean,
sadly,
think about the 80s and 90s, early 80s and early 90s, Rich. HBO wasn't even showing movies, R-rated movies during the daytime.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like when the 90s hits, they were bombarded with like think about the hippest, coolest movies you can from the 90s, and most of them have some sort of guns or violence culture in it, right? So that is definitely a legacy thing. I think the other side of that legacy thing, that's another side note. Really quick, the idea that this movie had a legacy where they tried to do some actual legit gun work. Eliza, his fiance, who tried to actually go and talk to filmmakers, talk to studio heads. Though it's a negative legacy, like you said, though, Rich, right? Where we still have shooting deaths on sets for some reason. Like it's still there. You know what I mean? Even when you have like the weird, like the major thing here. TJ, what about you? You got any legacy, like a thing where you go, this movie led to something else?
I mean, other than the Brandon Lee and the whole safety on set stuff, not really, because it kind of carved out its own path and exists in its own little pocket in cult fandom because of how special the situation is with this.
Yes,
So
the melancholy. That's an interesting thing. I do think I think this movie also like you were talking about Dark City earlier, Rich, right? Which looks remarkably similar. I think the Matrix, right? The Matrix with the comic book level violence, right? and I would say like another legacy aspect is this movie is the costume design is very specific, right? Like I was looking at the Michael Wincott costume like it was nobody's business. I don't know what was going on there, but it was like he had full hip boots, full knee boots, plus like
Tintin looks badass.
Everybody in the movie looks badass. There's not a single person where you go, I actually enjoyed Tony Todd too. I don't know what the fuck that gun was that he had.
Hank looks like he smells awful. Like
yes, well, yeah, they all look like they smell awful.
That's,
yes. Not Tony Todd. He looks like he smells great.
Oh, he might.
Yeah, Tony Todd like stepped in from the better side of town to just say, "Hey, I'm here for money because I like my
exactly."
Yeah, well, he looks like he's the guy that's like
that character. He's the only one who's not like totally into his own. I am evil for evil. He's just like
the driver, you know. Like,
he's just like, I think we should get you out of here. We need to go. So let's get some comments. Let's see what we said. Ken McKernan said, "Hiya, TJ. This was early, not late. Welcome, TJ. Talk About Loud. Thank you. We did. I'm really late on these. I was Scope Cowboy in the network a few times. He was cut from what I remember. He was cut because it was really hard to wrap around.
I got 2 versions of the work print, and I love that little stuff. And they, that's something I wish they would have like. I know it would turn this film completely different if they like included the train sequences or the horse stuff and tried to tie that all in. But I feel like normal audiences wouldn't get like the metaphors of all that. So like them changing the ending, adding the extra character, that kind of made it more.
They never. I will tell you that, TJ. One thing that's never talked about with the legacy of this movie, they never talk about a director's cut. Like
the second one. There's that. You guys know about the second one, the director's cut, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But this one is never going to get touched.
No.
Like it's one of those things where, it's just and I think.
And the stuff is not really worth it. Putting it into.
Well, and it also I think they went through 7 scripts. They were trying to get it right. You know what I mean? Like and just they finally synthesize it to the point where it works.
Sometimes when you're adapting material, you have to understand that what works in one medium isn't necessarily going to work 100%. In another.
Spawn.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see. Raven says, "Getting it so late, missed it all, and it was the Crow episode. Damn. Oh, sorry, you missed it, Raven. You can rewatch it.
Okay, Raven.
Hey guys,
you live on YouTube, so you can always go to.
We will live forever, like Eric Draven. I missed the review. Was it okay? We haven't seen the new one. I think she might be asking about the new one. We haven't seen the new one. Unfortunately, Raven, Rich has told us that he has not been invited to a critics screening.
There have been none scheduled.
Which is the kiss of death. That's the kiss of death, Rich. We talk about it all the time. We talk about it all the time, Rich.
There's a couple where that's not necessarily the case, but for the most part, yeah. It's 98% of the time not a good
98% of the time not good.
You know what I would like to see done?
Dad?
An animated thing like they did with Watchmen recently, but for this.
I think you could get a remarkable mileage out of an animated thing. I think you could do it like the Spawn animated.
But do it true to the comic and see how.
Do it true to the comic. The problem is, TJ, I think this is one of those rare things with regards to reboots and sequels where the legacy and the franchise viability are kind of on eggshells because it's at 90% with 250,000 reviews. I think people just love it, and I think that's the
only viability that it could possibly have moving forward with the
well, I mean, unless the 3 of us go to the movies this weekend and we come out and we go, we have an Alien Romulus moment where it's like, okay, that's pretty fucking great. Or I don't think it's happening because the buzz on Romulus was happening early. There's no buzz on the Crow. That scares me, but I think that's a great place to end. We've gone our traditional hour and 21 minutes, Rich. TJ, let's talk for a second. Where can people first off find your stuff? Where can people find your podcast? And do you have yours? What's your signature podcast?
So you can go to projectlouder.net. I have the TJ Bowser Power Hour, which I did an episode recently with comic book writer Cameron Lee, who also does a podcast on the Project Louder network with me called Stronger Than Before, and previously hosted the Big Bad Beetle Bros podcast. So yeah. But I also do Celluloid Psychosis with Paul Ashford. That is kind of like a movie and news podcast, kind of like what you guys do here, but we do much different movies, much stranger things. I
was raised in a movie theater. I do everything that somebody said to me, do you do a lot of like independent stuff? I'm like, no, I'm born and raised in a movie theater, so
yeah.
For me it's like it's tough, but I try to watch as much as I can.
I like to go on the fringe of stuff and try to find some very like hard to find and weird.
Tell us where people are going to be able to find your Jason
documentary. So that
I'm fascinated by that, by the way.
Yes, just, the Jason Goes to Hell documentary, The Hearts of Darkness, the making of the Final Friday. I love Jason Goes to Hell. It's one of my favorite Friday the 13th films. And
some of the greatest horror movie cameos ever.
Yes, it's so goddamn good. But that currently is finished. That movie is, we started the crowdfunding campaign before COVID hit, and then COVID hit, kind of stalled our production a little bit, and then we finished up. And then after we finished up, people were like, hey, this is really good. By people, I mean other like companies. So then companies would be like, I want it. No, I want it. So that's kind of where it's at right now.
That's good.
Eventually it's going to come out. It's just whenever that's settled. But the movie's done. The score's done. Everything is done. It's great. It just has to get in the hands of everybody. I am doing a convention next month with Adam Marcus. So maybe we'll show something there. Who knows? But that will be coming out soon. That's called Hearts of Darkness, the making of the Final Friday.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me on, man. It was fun. I love talking.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You'll fit right in with all of us. We're talking horrors is what we are. Anyway,
with the extra color commentary.
With all the extra stuff. But thank you for joining us. Stay in the green room for a couple minutes. We'll bring it back up. Let me get to Rich and his talking, and we'll also talk a little bit about the network. Thank you for joining us, TJ Bowser, the Project Louder Podcasting Network. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again. It was great, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. Rich, where can we find your stuff?
All of my writing can be found at FilmBuffOnline.com. We also have a Facebook page where we let you know when new stuff drops on the site with links to that. Also on the Facebook page, we have various posts about film history on this date in film history. That's kind of how I knew about
angry right. Missives about the Acolyte getting canceled.
Yeah, there's some of that there. We also, we'll drop like when somebody passes away, like the great Phil Donahue passing away earlier today. We had just a little notification about that.
I was talking about that today, right? Phil Donahue passing away. That was required viewing in my house, where my dad and I would fight about politics. And we watched Donahue, even though we hated watching Phil Donahue, we watched it every day without fail. And, we would talk about the guests. And I was just, a lot of things came out of watching that show every day. So he'll be back.
He was the mold. He was the solid mold from which a lot of other crap unfortunately came from, because everybody tried to push what he was doing to further extremes, and you wind up with like the Maury Poviches and the Morton Downey Juniors and things like that.
Jerry Springer.
And Jerry Springer. But Donahue was really, excuse me, he was solid. It was a solid, good show where he would look into actual issues of the day without exploitation.
My dad used to. He's got a bleeding heart, and I'm like, yes, he does, but he's a good person. You can tell he's a good person, so just let it go. Okay, you can find all my stuff, JW the Movie Guy on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Facebook, IMDb. So many things, Rich. You can find us, and next week we go from the melancholy of The Crow to a fun movie, something fun to end the summer. Ready? Shh. Top secret. Don't tell anybody what we're talking about next week. From the makers of the original Airplane, not the Wright brothers, is one of the greatest things ever. So next Monday we're doing Top Secret, Val Kilmer, one of the great funny movies of all time.
So many great sight gags in this movie that are just like
it
audacious.
It is the foundational piece by which the Naked Gun franchise could fly. Like it is. I
think it's the forgotten piece because this came between Airplane and
the Naked Gun.
And so it didn't do well at the box office, but we'll get into that next week.
We'll talk about it next week. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week for Top Secret. Go watch a movie, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Peace out.
Have a great day.
Let me take this stuff off.
Yeah.
Bye.
Say bye.
Thanks again to TJ for coming on.